Right. Well, so I'm really excited now because this is where I get the chance to spend a bit of time with two old friends who are quite magical. So let me introduce firstly Matthew Magic. Doctor is his fascination is around wonder. He's wondering about wonder and curiosity. And if ever you meet him and spend time with him, you realise just how wonderful he is and how wondrous it is to bring this to the classroom. And I'll get Dave to explain a little bit more briefly or shortly how that works in a classroom in a school setting. Matthew does magic. Having gone through an airport security with him, it takes a while because his pockets are so full of weird stuff. But we're all waiting for him while he has to sort of sort out while the security sort out what exactly this is passing through their scanners.
I did interrupt there, but I just love going through airport security because so often those brilliant people that are waiting there look so bored and so in need of some form of distraction and interest. So I actually feel it's part of a service to have a case full of weird and wonderful so that I get to demonstrate. And then people in the queue also start joining in as well. So we have this impromptu magic puzzle wonder session. I love travelling for that reason.
Birmingham Airport will never be the same again. They look forward. Now Flyby's gone, we're not sure what's going to happen. But anyway, we'll come back to Matthew. And also introduce Dave. Dave has been an associate of Independent Thinking for a long time. He's now my right-hand man in so many ways. He's also manning the office because the ladies in the office are on furlough. So he's doing so much for ITL, and I'm grateful for that. Apart from his own work around transition, he's just recently written Independent Thinking on Transition, and he also wrote the book Brave Heads. He works around the world supporting school leaders and education leaders, education systems, with his wisdom and his knowledge and his experience. But he's also, apart from being my right-hand man, he is Matthew's sidekick when it comes to the world of wonder and magic and intrigue and curiosity and the impact that has on learning and motivation, and really embodying this idea that there is another way. So in a time of global pandemic and stress and worry and going back and not going back and catching up and not catching up, I think it is fitting that we come at issues around motivation, learning, engagement in this way, in a way that is most unusual, but is absolutely captivating and does work. So let me just throw a question to Dave just to begin with. So Dave, tell us about your chance meeting with Matthew and what that led to.
Thank you, Ian. Yeah, I was slightly concerned about being painted as Matthew's Debbie McGee for all sorts of reasons, but we'll kind of cover that later. I first met Matthew when I was setting up an academy, and we were, it was in an area that needed a lot of positivity, but had challenges, a lot of challenges of literacy, numeracy, poverty, the things you would imagine. And I remember meeting Matthew on a corridor, and it was a chance meeting. And at that time, we had to try, the new building we'd been promised had been delayed, and we got to open in an old building. And I started talking to Matthew and telling him about this and about the old building and he was the only one who was excited by this. I remember walking around the old building with him, which I have to say was, if you imagine a 1950s Butlins camp that nobody had been in for 20, 30, 40 years, and you might have some kind of image of what it felt like. Most people saw this place and were filled with horror, and Matthew just saw the wonder and the excitement. And he started working with kids. That was about, let's look forward, let's not worry about a building, let's make the magic happen inside. And that's always stuck with me. And Matthew and I have become lifelong friends now. And I say lifelong, not because I'm planning on dying now, but because I do think we'll always be friends, because we bounce off each other, because we have a wondrous fascination with wonder. And I appointed Matthew to be an agent of wonder, which caused the DFE some slight consternation at the time, I seem to remember, as they wanted me to be appointing everybody that was to do with literacy and all the rest of it, but which are very important. But to me, an agent of wonder was the one thing I needed above more else. So kind of, let's start the story, Matthew. Do you want to just show us a little bit of magic?
I would. You know what? Just wind me up and off I go. We're talking about airports, but there's always the chance to carry some magic with us. But can I also just say, though, there's the magic of coincidence there. So we meet at the Learning Sciences Research Institute, brilliant institution, Nottingham University. I'm studying the uses of wonder for learning and engagement. And I'm looking at the traditions of wonder and identifying its heritage. It's a rich heritage, stretches all the way back, sorts of things that we've done to share and produce wonder in our lives. So when that happened, and this opportunity to really put it into practice, that was one of the greatest pieces of magic, the greatest gift. And it has left me extremely optimistic about wonder's power to engage, enchant, to bring joy and to open up. For me, it's all about propagation. Wonder's not something that you hold on to, wonder's something that you share. And wonder is, when we talk about agent of wonder, there's a nice pun in there, in agency. The idea that you give people agency, you confer some sort of seed or power that people then can go off and work with. And for me, the work is all about giving people power. Magic as a heritage is fascinating. I'm talking about not sort of, we're not talking about sort of belief magic. We're not talking about Dennis Wheatley or Aleister Crowley or Harry Potter. We're talking about conjuring, good old conjuring. And good magic just creates these moments where we are surprised or we see the world anew, because magic's all about creating impossible things. So we could just take something every day, like here's a magic circle, and normally when you take something solid and you put solid through solid, like so, normally that's you'd expect no give at all, no give. But with magic, of course, 1, 2, 3, you do impossible things. And magic is all about just doing impossible things that stop us taking things for granted. I'm so blessed in so many ways. My mum and dad, amazing people, they encouraged me to get into magic when I was really young. I was about 4, and a very awkward, cack-handed lefty, and I still am. Don't ask me to ride a bike, and if you're going to play swing ball, forget it. I'm really, really awkward. But magic, mum and dad encouraged me because it helped me get sort of dexterous, as it were. Nice pun, isn't it? Sinister and dexter. And, so like some of my earliest tricks, you'll probably recognize this, but a simple magic set containing one of these. Now this actually is a plastic version of actually a trick that goes back a long way. It's even mentioned in Professor Hoffman's Modern Magic, a great tome. There's a picture of it here. Let me just see. So this is 1876, and there it is.
Wow.
So it's funny, certain magic is a heritage, it's passed on. So, and with this, you'll know that you just have it, and I'm sure many households have these kicking around. You have a little ball in a vase, and you'll see that there's a very sort of narrow stem. And look what happens if you just touch the top. Oh, yep. Can you see? Look. And there we are. We can just restore it. So the ball vase does impossible things, and easily overlooked. I remember taking this into a classroom to show some of my inspirations in magic, and there was a girl in the group, and afterwards she said that was incredible. She took up magic and became a fantastic performer of tricks and trickery, and this was the trick that started her on that road. And she would always pop up in the Wonder Room. We'll talk about the Wonder Room later, but she'd always pop up and do tricks. And what's so wonderful about magic? Dexterity, confidence. There's a lot of talk about things like resilience. Well, you know, tricks also go wrong. There's nothing better than having to stand up in front of people and cope with stuff going wrong. Magic allows, you know, it encourages to learn things as well. I also remember the school library had a copy of this, the Ladybird book of tricks and magic. And I can still remember decoding it. I remember how much I wanted to learn the tricks that were contained within this book. And it's still in print. It's a wonderful thing. And I think if I remember rightly, the very first trick has the ultimate simple pocket trick. You can do it with your pen. And it's the fact that you can take something solid like a pen, and with a little bit of fluence, it becomes
wobbly. Wobbly
pen. So you've always got a trick in your pocket. And over the years, I've ensured that I've always got a lot of tricks, but say all you need is a pen. But this book is responsible for a lot of, you know, for a whole pursuit in my life.
The only thing that worries me with that, and Matthew and I have talked about this a lot, and I know Matthew agrees, is that tricks are maybe not what we normally want to be focusing on in learning. I think magic is useful. I think tricks and magic per se have a great way of adapting the question, but I'm always keen on where it moves further. And I know for some of you, if anyone who's seen some of Matthew's tricks, some of them more difficult to see on a screen, but some of Matthew's tricks are absolutely stunning. I've not a clue how he does them. I never would be able to do that. And in some ways, that's a bit frightening for a teacher, because you kind of go, actually, I just don't have that skills. I've tried palming coins, absolutely impossible. But I think you can use those kind of the access tricks that Matthew's talking about, or the access magic, and not use them to go, hey guys, look, I'm playing tricks on you, but to get their interest. And I'll give you an example. One of my favorites is this. It costs about 8 or 9 quid or something like that. It's a classic rope trick. So you've got 3 different coloured ropes. So if you untie the 3 ropes, you've got, you know, a green, a red, and a yellow. But rather than just say, hey guys, I'm going to perform this for you, link it to your curriculum. So, whoops, take that back a bit so I'm not cutting the top of my head off. So suppose I was a science teacher. Let's imagine I'm talking about the 3 states of matter. And we say, okay, well, let's talk about solids. Now, solids, and we get the young people to imagine and to think and maybe act like the solids. Solid particles, they just vibrate, they don't move about in the dimensions, they just vibrate. And what I'll say is, right, and whenever I touch that ring, I want you to remember and to tell me about the solid. And let's act like that. And then whenever I touch the red one, the red ring is for liquids. Now, liquids move around much more gradually past each other. They actually are not fixed in one place. But so that's the red ring. Whenever I touch the red ring, we're going to talk about liquids, and I want you to answer me about that or behave like that. And the yellow is for gas, and you kind of then talk about the gas zooming around and all the things that it does. And you say, right, okay, so I've got my 3 rings. I've got my green, so get them all to talk and to remind what they are. And then what do you do? You kind of say, but hold on, what about if we took this solid to a hotter place? Would it still behave like a solid? No, it behaves differently. And you actually say, actually, everything is all 3 colours. And you kind of have got, I guarantee you, when those kids go home, they will say to their parents, hey, you never guess what, our science teacher did this, and what was it? They're talking about the process. Now, if you're thinking, I've got some huge magic skills, you're not surprised, I'm not at all. You buy these things at the shop, and Matthew can't share his secrets because he's got the magic circle and everything. I've got magic nothing. So I'm there. As you can see, all that these things is that they've just got the top colour difference. So when I just tied the ends together. It's a very easy to do thing, but it's not that you're not doing it for the magic, you're doing it for the conversation. And that's, I think, what interests me.
I love that. Sorry, just jumping in, because I love the fact that you are presenting something that's memorable. You know, and it's having these hooks. So magic is a wonderful way of just creating these moments that will stay with you, and that's so essential. You know, so essential in our.
Can I just jump in there? That it's interesting from a neurological point of view. There's a neurochemical called dopamine, which is a key memory chemical. It's a key learning chemical. I refer to it as teacher's little helper. And you get dopamine from having a reward or the anticipation of a reward. This has come to us through the work of Associate Dr. Andrew Curran. Check out the little book of big stuff about the brain. So reward or anticipation of reward are an essential part of effective learning because of the dopamine effect. So what I see when I look at magic, and especially when the more you do it in the classroom, you're forever building up this sense of anticipation, this sense of something different and unusual, and I'm not sure what is going to happen very, very soon. So you're drawing them in physically with their eyes, with their thoughts, but also at a neurochemical level, you're working to improve their memory. And then when they get there, wow, what? How did you do that? Then you get the whole flood of dopamine, the reward system's kicking in. And you get with dopamine, you get a thing called, I think it's called the look back effect, which is sort of 15, 20 minutes or so prior to the dopamine rush, get remembered better because of that dopamine. So overall, you even just learning a few basic little tricks like that one, Dave, you're working towards making the so much more of the lesson memorable in an instantaneous and enjoyable way. There's a lot of talk at the moment about memory and space learning and Ebbinghaus curve of forgetting and review and repetition, and all of those things work. And so does that. Just a magic trick, and then boom, 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 and then it goes in and it stays in. Sorry, Matthew, over to you again.
No, wonderful. And I've always thought that if there are phases to wonder, the first phase is anticipation, and that wonder can be designed for. So one of the essential things that we're looking at in the classroom, in our lives, is to find ways of creating that anticipation. Really essential, you know. I remember at school there was a teacher that always carried around a box. I always wanted to know what she had in that box. I still to this day don't know what she kept in that box, but it kept my attention for years. And I've done a lot of work with boxes. You know, boxes are incredible things because they signal to us that there's something inside, but we don't know what it is. And I think, so having things in boxes, how we treat our materials is really important. And then you have this joy of unpacking and showing. So I'm very much like that with the so-called materialities of schooling, is to ensure that I treat them as apparatus and properties and ensure that I give them some degree of status and look after them. So I keep all my materials in boxes, and it's wonderful to unpack them and to reveal them. But it's also important not to disappoint. That's the other thing that it comes down to as well. So the other key is with our concealment and our hiding is to ensure that we then have something to share and something to show. But yeah, using boxes to create anticipation, finding ways of making things pop.
So come on, show us what's in that box. That's what I want to know now.
Yes, so you do. I might show you a bit later on. Can I talk about something else though? There's anticipation for you. Can I talk about, so Dave, you showed us a trick that used magic as a sort of a metaphor, props. I want to show you also that there are many aspects of this universe that are magical. So the laws of physics, for example, or the way that mathematics works, does impossible, incredible things. Something I've been drawn to for many years is this particular trick, and every few years I make a new version of it. So here's some examples. I think I made my first one when I was about 12. And so every now and then I'll just go back and create a new version. Let me show you how it works. So it has no moving parts. It's solid. And you'll see it does something really, well, I like to think unexpected. It's a special compass. And you'll notice that the compass has an arrow pointing in one direction. And if I turn it, you'll see that on both sides, the arrow points in the same way. But with this compass, if you want to travel, let's say, south, you have to travel west. And if you want to travel north, you have to travel east. But the best thing about this compass, believe it or not, is that it seems to show you the way it's always the same, but actually there's a trick to it. It also shows you where you've been and where you go. So this magic compass it's purely, there's no moving parts, and it's all about rotation. I first discovered it in this book, the Ali Bongo Book of Magic. Yes, Ali Bongo. And honestly, I've shown this to people, and slightly better than I just did it there. And it just creates this desire to find out how it works. And there's no deception to it, really. It just does its thing. So it's sorry.
And I think that's exactly what I love about curiosity, is it makes you ask. Many kids will go that and actually go, why and how? And as you said, it's a mathematical. I love this. This is my simplistic one, that you get these in packs off the internet. And it's just a piece of plastic. It's a single piece of plastic of which they come in packets, and each piece of plastic's got some ridges down it. And all that happens is if you run your finger down the end, you get a noise. Now, if you hold it to your ear, you hear. Now, as you can see, I've attached it to now advertising a can of soft drink, and you listen, you should be able to hear. Oops. Happy New Year. Now try again. You hear that? So, and again, do it faster so that you can try. You can use it in all sorts of places. You can, for kids, it asks questions because you can hold it on wood and it will be louder. If you can do it faster, it gets higher pitched. I've got different ones that say different things. What you've also got, what message would you leave for future on this? It's obviously the basics of what you used to use records. It's just vibrations. But I love that there's lots of things. There's things like this sound trip, and I've got this around as many as 50 people. It's just simple conductivity. If I held one end, and we can't with magic manage to do this, but if you were all able to grab this and we were to go around a circle of 50, the moment the last person touched this, it would ring. In other words, the current, very tiny microcurrent, passes through everybody. How can that not stun a group? How can that not get a group fascinated? Or
look, Dave.
Yeah.
Let's have a look.
All right. Even works over that distance. And things like Bernoulli. Now, this is a simple puzzle. You can leave this in your classroom, but you're not allowed to lift this up. You've got to get this disc in the middle. You can see that disc comes out. So we can see it's not a trick this is not magic. How do I get it out? You try and use your fingers and it won't do. The simple technique is you blow over the top of it, and it's like, well, why does it do that? Because, when I blow, I lower the air pressure. I lower the air pressure above, and it lifts. It's called the Bernoulli effect, and it's how aeroplanes fly. Now, what a cracking way to get kids interested in physics. Now, you can have that around as a constant piece. Matt, I think you've got a bit of physics as well, haven't you?
Absolutely. That idea that you can embody principles in things and then show them without the need for a gloss. So you can have a direct experience of something. That's also really important. We're in a mediated world where so often we don't actually get to grips with things in the same way. There's very different learning from a screen or learning from an app to actually get up close and dirty to something. So this is an interesting object that has physics embodied in it. It's called a rattleback or a celt or an anargire. Now, they're called Celts with a soft C because they were often buried with the Celts. We find a lot of these in graves. The Egyptians also had them. I even had a talk in a museum about these because, well, we don't always know we don't really know what they were for, but we know that they were treasured. And I did have an argument in a museum about the fact that we don't know much about them. And it's good not knowing much about them. You know, sometimes mystery or uncertainty is another form of provocation, but we do know what they do. So let me show you. When you pop it down on a surface, you'll see it spins. Now, if we try and spin it in the opposite direction, look what happens. Now, can you see that? This is why it's called a rattleback, because it rattles and it turns back. Now, you could, if you wanted to be really strict, say that it violates the conservation of angular momentum. But actually, I just like to say it does something really unexpected and magical and mysterious, but it's pure physics.
What stuns me about that is that, because I know Matt and I we do a lot of work in the Isle of Man, and one of our favourite places, and there was some of those had been discovered in some Viking graves, I think, wasn't it, Matthew? And they didn't know what they were for, and you kind of think, blimey, how on earth did somebody do that and realise that time ago? And for me, I love items that link the past. I mean, I've got old newspapers. I'm holding something there from November the 21st, 1683. That sends a chill up my spine, particularly as I notice on the top, it says, the old world of purging and inspecting, there needs to be a new way. I mean, you know, it's spooky, but I feel I must be the person who failed my third year history. I think when I was 14, I got kicked out of history because I couldn't learn the facts. I've got a terrible memory, but I love this stuff. This coin's 2,500 years old. I know it doesn't look like a coin. It was a pre-runner of it. People used to wear it on their clothes, and they would pass it and trade it. Now, that's real. That's human. And probably my favourite item, which links history and science, is this thing. Now it's a cup, and just in case you're wondering, I can drink from it. It's no hole in the bottom. That's it. Right, lovely. Now, at the end of a day's work in, I think it was Greece, whether it was Rome as well, I don't know, but they would pay their workers, and you'd get apparently something like 8 cups of wine, which interesting. I wonder if they had any pandemics then when they had all that wine. But you were only allowed up to a certain level. Now, to try and stop you drinking more than you were supposed, there's a line on the inside of that cup. Can you see it? And you see there's a kind of like finger sticking up in the middle of it, which you don't notice and you drink round. But look what happens if I'm greedy and I take too much. So if I pour it now and getting close to the line, I've now got wet feet. It is dripping. Right? Now if you can see, it's yeah. I literally have got wet socks now, and oops, my wife's looking through the window, wondering what's going on. I've lost it all, but it's actually a simple siphon. It works the same way as a car. If somebody was trying to get petrol out of a car or move petrol from one place to another, it's that kind of siphon idea.
Show us the inside, Dave. Show us the inside of it. I haven't seen inside. Here we go.
Yeah, so all it is at the bottom of that finger, there's almost like a little straw sticking up from the bottom of there, goes up to that level. And there's over the top of it is something else with a hole in. So the moment the water gets up there, you've formed a complete circuit, and the whole gravity pulls the lot out onto your feet. But what a cracking way it's not just science, it's history, it's also social. What a great way, if you wanted a PSHE lesson. Is it right that when we take slightly too much, we lose everything? What would that be like? Thinking about that, there is so many ways in to this as a thing. Matt, I think you've got a similar item.
I have a parallel piece that it's similar. It's a pot. It's interesting pot, and it requires just a splash of water. Now, water, what a remarkable thing that is alone. You could spend forever contemplating the mysteries of hydrogen and oxygen and how it all works, but that's given it time to do its thing. Now look, watch. Now we have a little more water, but watch this. Just another moment, and we have more. And now this is the gift that keeps on giving. Because believe it or not, you know, how long have we got? Because it just never ends. Perfect in a lockdown, never short of water. Anyway, a toast to everybody watching. Here's to your health and your happiness, and may your wonders never cease. Cheers.
Cheers. And I suppose I'd like to take us on. We've kind of got items that are historic. We've had items that are scientific. I think we need items that are puzzling to just think. I'm not too sure. I'm always a bit confused by puzzles, but there are. I know we've mentioned already the Wonder Room, and maybe it's time to explore some of the sort of things we had in the Wonder Room. And the Wonder Room was literally a room full of Matthew's magic. And Matthew used to work 1 day a week or sometimes 2 days a week for me. But the reality, his effect was much more than that, because kids would use this room, they'd go to the room, the staff would go to the room, and in it was all the kind of objects that we've been sharing: rocks, stones, some natural objects, some insects, and even there was a theory about some colonies, but there was all sorts of stuff. But there was these things, puzzles. Now, I kind of find I haven't got a lot of patience with these, but it's amazing. We found kids would sometimes spend forever, and then they would become the expert of their puzzle. And they were the proudest people, kids who wouldn't normally share stuff and want to share the thing. When they got good at a puzzle, they'd meet a stranger, and it wouldn't bother them if they were a colonel of something, or they were an important royal person, or whoever they were. They kind of go, "Go on, can you do this then?" "I can." And it's that wonder. Now, I have to say, getting that triangle out of there is not actually, sorry, that pyramid out of there is not working for me. Matt, can you have a go?
Shall I have a go? Thanks, Dave. Oh, I love this puzzle. It does. See, the thing about puzzles is they encourage persistence. There are many types of puzzle. I've always said they shouldn't be used as objects of torture. They shouldn't be used as an opportunity to lord it over other people. But they should be presented as examples of ingenuity. It's like, have a go at this, try this out. And I find they're wonderful. But there's also that wonderful synaptic moment when you are, if you're lucky, successful. But yeah, the number of pupils that would find a puzzle that meant something to them, and it would give them such pride and such real ownership, not just a sense of ownership, but real ownership. They'd own this puzzle, it would become their thing. And of course, puzzles represent all sorts of, apart from things like dexterity, there's all sorts of wonderful things embodied in puzzles. You know, topology. This was one of my earliest puzzles. I've made many over the time. They also look a bit magical, because with this one, you'll see you've got a piece here and you've got a piece here, and they're on separate loops. And in between, in the middle, you've got this massive hole. And the idea is that you're able to get this nut all the way through the hole, as it were, to the other side. If you look at it, you'd think it couldn't be done. But like all good puzzles, there's a way through. You know, impossible seeming things often turn out to be possible. They're soluble. And I love puzzles for the reason that they're presented kindly, they're meaningful, they're touchstones, and they embody, you know, some of the ingenuity of the universe. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think if you can be thinking of a few to show a few of the items from the Wonder Room, while I just described something we did, which was because we had this room which was open at the start and the end of the day, and at lunch breaks times and various other times, and then we increasingly started to open up in lessons. But it concerned me as the head at the time, is how do we get all of the staff to engage with this? And I wondered how that could be done. Because I knew the kids were beginning to engage, but I wanted the staff to think about the links into learning. And Matthew had this genius idea. And what he did was he got 50 or so cake boxes, put a number on the outside of each one, tied it up with black ribbon, as only Matthew could do, because Matthew has such style that's, as I say, style in me, as you may have gathered, has never ever been an issue. But Matthew put in each one, he put one of his objects, and I'll get him to describe some of the things in a moment. But what we did then is, because at a briefing, we had them on the floor. The staff came in. This was a few weeks before Christmas. It's a tough, hard term, and in a challenging community, brilliant community, but challenging. You kind of go. The staff came in. You could just see them straight away interested. And what Matthew did was gave them each a box. They could choose which number they wanted. We recorded the number, but they were not allowed to open it till they got back into their classrooms. And then with their kids, and this could be young people, any age from 11 to 18, they had to say how they were they had to find ways of using it as many times in their lessons that week. And then at the end of it, they just returned the box to us with a little note or a video or something that told us what they'd done with it. Out of it came the best staff training I've ever seen in any school, where the staff were leaving and sharing and enjoying what these objects had done. They'd used these things that made them interested, things that got them talking, things that are exciting, things that are different, things that you just go, wow, they used them to promote their learning. So Matt, do you want to show us some of the stuff we put in there, or in the Wonder Room?
Yeah. Let's talk about Wonder Rooms as well. We talked about magic as a tradition, part of the heritage of wonder. Wonder Rooms, or cabinets of curiosities, are also this golden, shining moment where wonder really took incredible form, particularly in the 16th, 17th century. And these ideas of rooms just filled with the stuff of life. There was an analog revolution going on back then. We have a digital revolution now. We have an analog revolution back then, where just so much stuff came over to Europe, and we didn't quite know what it all was. So these arrays, these rooms packed with things, you imagine what they would have been like to have explored, filled with stuff, where you actually get a chance to get up close and have a prod and have a look at stuff. So much learning comes from what I always think of as direct encounters with things. And this opportunity to set up a modern day cabinet of curiosities in school was so exciting, because at last it's this chance to put out, most schools have cabinets of curiosities in a way. They have things called resource cupboards. They have things locked away, but they're often not out in the same sort of appealing way. So the idea is we have a space where people could come and just get up close and have a look at things. It was packed. That's the whole idea. And another note to add to this is when we set it up, there was a lot of like, oh, are you sure about that? It's all going to get nicked. It's all going to get broken. What's the point? And all those years, nothing got nicked. Well, I say a few seeds got nicked, but of a Venus flytrap plant. But stuff didn't get stolen. Things got used. Pupils really took ownership. They really joined. So did staff. I always felt it was important that it wasn't about a person controlling the space. It was about somebody facilitating, allowing things to happen, and that real sense of being able to share. I also found what's interesting is I now understand why more is more in a cabinet, because different things speak to different people. And I would be sent all sorts of interesting puzzles in the form of people and pupils to come and have a look and join in. And what I was always gripped by was, in a room absolutely stacked with stuff, I always thought, how are we going to get focus? Is it just going to be way too fizzy? But pupils would always come in. I'd always invite them to have a look around, to explore, and they'd always come to rest at an object, and they'd ask a question about it. And that moment when they paused and asked a question was that moment when I knew the magic was happening, because they would find something of interest, that they wanted to know more about, and having the opportunity for them to lay hands on something interesting and ask questions I saw over the time so many new hobbies, so many new things arise. You know, these are generative spaces. Things are generated from within, usually from the seed of a single object. I put this here as an example. Do you know what this is?
Not a clue.
Good. It is actually it's a cage from China that was used for keeping crickets in, singing cricket. I once had some singing crickets. I was in a pet shop and I saw them for sale and I thought, that's the most incredible pet. And it turns out that pet shops just sell them to feed to tarantulas and bearded dragons. But I thought these are in their own rights are fascinating creatures to have. So we had these brown crickets, which are very hard to find now because breeders don't like them because they are extremely noisy. But we had a tank of brown crickets and they're very territorial. They're experts at social distancing. If you put a piece of egg box in a tank, they always want to find the highest point and they then defend the highest point. And they were a very interesting lesson in aggression. You know, if I had children come in that were known to be fighters, they'd often stop and look at these crickets that were fighting and they'd ask questions about them and they'd realise, you know, sometimes aggression is a pointless exercise. These crickets seemed almost pointless in the way that they were fighting for, in a world where they had enough food and enough to do. But crickets were great. Mealworms were astonishing. You can do amazing things with mealworms. I'll talk about those in a minute. But I don't know if you've spotted my other favourite. Can you see them?
Not your colony again.
Yes, the colony. This, here we are. Come on.
Can I just ask before those of you watching, kind of somebody comes to you and says, I've got a colony I want to put in the Wonder Room. Kind of what comes to your head? I mean, I was thinking hundreds, thousands. No, just look at him. He'll try and tell you this is a colony.
Dave and viewers, here in my hand I have what's known as an Indian stick insect. Now, you can't see how many there are here, but when I did give Dave some stick insects, I did introduce them as the colony. And he's never forgiven me for this because, well, let me tell you about the female stick insect.
It died. So you kind of...
You know what? I'll try not to lose my respect for you, Dave. But the stick insect is an incredible thing. They were brought over to Europe from India, late 1800s, and they were all females. And the truth be told, we don't see male stick insects of this variety, of this species, because the female has this ability to lay clones of herself. So its Greek term is parthenogenesis, a virgin birth. It's remarkable to think that effectively, I mean, it's quite incredible that inside this stick insect are eggs which will hatch out to become her again. So in a way, the first stick insect brought over back in the day is still here because she's just cloning herself onwards and onwards and onwards. So when I say a colony, it's a bit like a thunk, Ian, really. I think it's possible to have a colony of one because it's a potential colony. Within this stick insect are endless generations of the same beast. Here she is. She's very shy today, unfortunately. Doesn't want to perform. But I think it's about vision as well, Dave. You know, there's optimism and vision, and you can have a colony of one. And actually, in lockdown, because I haven't been able to give away my stick insects, I am absolutely overrun with the lovely creatures. Also, why stick insects? Why insects? You know, I've also been interested not only in the wow of wonder, but also in the yuck. And there is so often a moment of, what do you want to be holding that for? I've always thought that I want to trace the transformation in pupils and people and get them to see the beauty and the wonder of what might seem unlovable. Many people have a revulsion to insects, but actually, with the right eyes, you see their incredible beauty. So I've always thought that it's really important to have that journey, and insects are your really great way in to create that. It's interesting that the word curiosity and the word care share their root in Latin, and curate but the idea of caring about things, how important it is to have our kids learn to care and look after living things and learn to love things that they might not have thought of as lovable in the first instance.
So with that in mind, Matthew, and we've talked about this before, the interest and the curiosity and the wonder that you find in a virus.
Oh.
So, and I think that the more at the moment, there's this invisible thing which is wreaking havoc around the world and killing so many people and harming so many, but it's invisible to the human eye. But as soon as you start, and that which adds to the fear. There's genuine fear, and there's a right to have fear. But I think it adds to it because of this invisible threat. And then you move into areas around like the zombie hordes, and it's just so much that we just can't get our heads around. But as soon as you start taking an interest, and you talked about the beauty in the virus, in particular this one, but viruses generally, then it changes things, and you named your fear, which is one of the ways that we can help overcome fear. So just tell us a little bit about wonder, curiosity, and the novel coronavirus.
I think that's a wonderful point there. I mean, I've always thought that wonder, we mustn't be over sentimental about what wonder is. It's not all about whiskers on kittens and raindrops on roses. But there is wonder in slime molds and wonder in insects, and yes, wonder in viruses. The word wonder might also be connected etymologically to the word for wounder. So it's this idea that wonder is when we cut from our normality and we see things differently. Our eyes are open, and viruses. Obviously, our eyes are certainly open to viruses in our current world. But because they're nanoscopic, we take them for granted. We don't think of their actions. But the more you explore the world of the virus, the more you feel something approaching awe. This sublime sense of just how incredible they are. Viruses at the moment, obviously, there's sort of terrifying threat about viruses. When I grew up in the 70s, we were always scared about things like rabies. Rabies is another viral form. They've always been objects of fear, but actually viruses are also objects of hope. We think that, for example, we found only recently that the ocean is filled with viruses. So that makes up most of the mass of living or part living things in the sea. Viruses are responsible for many of them for eating up things like algae and bacteria. Without viruses, we probably wouldn't have photosynthesis occurring in the same way. Without viruses, viruses, they have this ability to splice genetic information. So 8% of human DNA we reckon comes from viruses. So, in a way, we've been shaped by viruses at our very core, at our proteinaceous core. But viruses, we think, offer also hope for the future in things like antibiotic in the war against bacteria, and we're discovering new things all the time. In 2013, we discovered something called the Pandora virus. We found it in an amoeba, which was living behind a contact lens of a poor woman. So they took the contact lens, they found the amoeba, and inside the amoeba was a Pandora virus. And the Pandora virus is a bacteriophage, so it eats bacteria. So we keep finding new ones. And there are millions and millions of types of viruses. Viruses make us question the difference between living and dead. They question the boundaries about species. But in terms of pure number, we are absolutely surrounded by the invisible. The invisible has such an effect on us. And even the last 10 years or so, we discovered that human lungs, which we thought were sterile, turns out that they contain at least 70 different types of virus. They don't kill us. We're surrounded by things that it's only occasionally they go rogue and they affect our health. But actually,
the kids are fascinated by this, and actually the fact, and I think it is turned to that fascination, the fact that we are effectively our own little planets. We've got little things living in our pores that almost rarely leave us. They kind of treat us as we're there with them. And I think I still remember not only getting weird packages from Mexico, which smelt odd and made me worry about Matthew, they actually don't worry before anybody starts calling the drug police. They were actually containing Mexican jumping beans. Matthew set up a piano it was a kind of like a lexicon. The alphabet was there, and these jumping beans moved around on them, and the kids turned it into a literacy game. What are the beans telling us today? What are they spelling out?
That means then I get, sorry, thank you, Dave, because that means I can talk about insect-centered literacy devices.
Yeah.
I talked about mealworms.
Yeah.
Actually, this one was designed in the first instance for jumping beans. And let me show you inside here. Inside this box, you'll see it's kind of a little maze, or like a bagatelle board. And this was a prototype for jumping beans. You put the jumping beans in the box, and they move around, and they will end up in these little pens next to letters. So what you've got is effectively an insect-powered game of Boggle, or the equivalent. And the kids would be really fascinated to not only look at the jumping beans, but to see what they were spelling out. And so it was a brilliant sort of stealth literacy device.
And the day that the African stinking lily or whatever it was produced its obnoxious smell, I remember kids coming rushing to tell everyone else, "God, you want to smell this stuff?" And what was great is that it wasn't just the horrible smell, it was the fascination about this thing that smelled like dead meat. Kids love it.
The voodoo lily was a remarkable thing. Yes, it blooms from nothing, from this little corm. Out comes this incredible structure which attracts flies. The smell is unlike anything else, but nobody who smells it will ever forget the smell of the African voodoo lily.
I'm going to have to interrupt you. We've got about 5 minutes to go, and I've got just a few more questions. I like the idea of the Mexican jumping bean Ouija board in school. I think that's interesting. And also, I saw you with teachers with Mexican jumping beans, and we were all holding them, and they were moving about. And it came as a surprise to most of us in the room that actually they are insects, as opposed to anything else going on. So that's worth thinking about when you're shipping stuff from Mexico. I've got two major questions really, just to sort of finish off. One is for Dave and one is for Matthew. I'll go with Dave first. Dave, you talked about the Wonder Room, but also know Matthew put plaques up around the school, and there was a maze, there was a natural maze that he was creating outside, there was one that he built inside. There was so much going on around the school. What would you say from a leadership point of view, with your head teacher hat on, with your Ofsted, with your got to get your results, with the inner city school, BSF school? What would you say was the impact of having Matthew's work in the school? And then Matthew, for your question, just at the very end, is where do we start? Do we, is it the nature table? Is it the matchbox? Is it the whatever? So, but just go with Dave first, please.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. For me, there is no other way of doing it than this, because if you are fixated on getting great results, fine, I understand why, but you cannot belittle how important it is to get young people engaged in their topics, fascinated, to get the neuroscience working. So wonder it's not about, hey guys, do this and forget about the learning. Absolutely not. I hope what everyone's picked up today, it's that hook in. Now the plaques you mentioned, what we call it was a wonder trail, to me was brilliant. And you can do that. Anyone watching this, Matthew, I know, and I would like you to imagine your own questions, but we are very happy for you to use the ones that he came up with as a starter. And I've got that as a separate sheet. Just email us at Independent Thinking, and I'll be very happy to share it with you. But what they had was just these 100 different questions, and they varied. Some of them were, Matthew's already mentioned thunks, which Ian, you're genius behind. We've got packs of them, if any of you haven't got them, and books of them and things like, is there more future than past? Is nice more important than right? Is it important to have enemies? Those kind of questions. There was also some jokes. There was also philosophical questions. There was also one I loved, which was a wooden bell button near my office, which said, "Do not push this button." And the reality was that if people did, you went, oh no, you haven't pushed the button. And of course it wasn't connected to anything, but it was the start of so much. But the reason for doing it was it gave another way of seeing the building. When kids were going to lessons, they saw them. We would say, can you find all 100? Or can you find me your favourite 5? And when the new kids came to school for transition, rather than going, go and tick off this list to find out where the English room is, it would be, right, we've got 100 questions. They're all on the walls, but they're hidden in, they're in full view, but maybe you've got to look carefully for them. Some were down at bottom level, some will be high at the edge of stairs and things like that. Find them and come back with your favourite 5. So how can that not change the atmosphere for the young people in the school? I'm not going to say you suddenly get amazing exam results, but what you will get is more kids who are positive about their learning. You get more kids that are positive about learning. You're going to get more engagement in the process of learning, and they're going to feel positive about their schools. Yeah. I saw kids bringing parents into school who had never done that, not because they wanted to, but to show something that Matthew had done, or to share something, or to give something, or to bring in something. And that just transforms the interaction that you, as a leader and as a school, have with your pupils. Okay. So to me, if I only had one job I could appoint in a school now, I mean, I've retired from headship a number of years, it would be an agent of wonder.
Okay.
So you get the wonder, the rest of it will follow.
I suspect you were encouraging lifelong learning and curiosity and wonder as well. If you think that Einstein started with a little compass in his hand as a child that was given as a gift, and it grew from there. So you're doing far more above and beyond just the exam results. Well, Matthew, take us to the. No, we're going to run out of time. You save it for the next one. Leave them wanting more. That's the first rule of showmanship, Dave. Come on. We've done this. Matthew, last word from you before you hand back to me. Where do we start? How do we start? How can we start small?
Thank you. Start small with ourselves. Everybody needs to look. I think the joy of this one is that question is, what do I find wondrous? And it's often about things that are manifested, things that you can hold and look at. So look for something that embodies your sense of wonder and then share it. You need only a tiny space. Wonder is eminently portable, but you just need to dedicate a little bit of space somewhere in the classroom, in a library, in the reception area, anywhere that you can just dedicate. So you can start your own cabinet of curiosities. Find something that expresses something you want to talk about, something that you're interested in, something you want to share. Start there, and then what I've noticed over and over again is these seeds then grow. Because if you've got something you're interested in and other people become interested, they want to start to share their own interests. So you just only have to start with the tiniest of seeds for things to grow and flourish and propagate.
Right. No, that's brilliant, lovely. The nature table, I've heard you talk to teachers about that, or the matchbox with just some few little bits and pieces in. So start small, start cheap. It's all out there. Just get wonder. Wonder is free. Encouraging wondrousness is free.
Wonder is free. Wonder is for everyone. Wonder sort of auto differentiates. Wonder should be a celebration, and you should enjoy. I mean, I love structures, but I also love it when things go. The paradigm of wonder is you don't always know where things are going to go. There's mysteries and there are surprises. So just starting small and letting things grow will pave your way to something really special and wonderful.
It is worth just to throw in and say, Matthew and I are actually offering a full day's working with groups of schools or schools who want to really get further on the journey of wonder, and we would love to work with you. So you just contact us if you fancy that.
Okay. Oh, there we go. We get an advert in at the end. I like that as well. If you do want to contact us, come by me, ian@independentthinking.co.uk. We're on Twitter @ITL Worldwide. If you want to carry on the conversation, find out any more, www.independentthinking.com. You can find out more about Dave, more about Matthew, more about all that we do under the There Is Another Way banner. IndependentThinkingPress.com are our books, apart from Dave's books, right? Brave Heads and Transition, Independent Thinking on Transition. We've also got Matthew's book there, which is a little book of awe and wonder, a cabinet of curiosities, which is a fascinating book. And you have to find, I think it's 50 ants working their way around the various pages. You're certainly used to it, come with a magnifying glass as well. So a book that walks the talk. All IT Press books at the moment are 30% off if you use the code CPD30. And if you want the ebooks, you don't get the magnifying glass. You can zoom, I suppose, with your fingers. 50% off using the code VAT50 because the government knocked VAT off the ebooks. And if you come, but to get those discounts, you have to come via independentthinkingpress.com. If you go via Amazon, you don't get the discounts and we don't get the tax, and that's not a good thing. Dave, brilliant as ever. Thank you very much. Thank you for all you do for ITL. And Matthew, thank you for being part of what makes us who we are, and thank you for being you and your wondrousness. And I look forward to meeting up with you both again very soon. Okay.
Such a joy. Thank you so much.
Bye.